Hello there and welcome. This is Anca Novacovici with Eco-Coach, and this is my second ever Facebook Live. I'm really excited to be here with you guys. So what I wanted to do today is to talk a little bit about the return on investment around sustainability projects, right? And how do you calculate that? Because one of the questions that I get a lot of is how do I make the business case, right? And when you make the business case, the most important thing is to really have some numbers ready to share with your colleagues, to share with executive management. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And if you are here, be sure to say hello. If you have any questions, enter them in the comment box below, and I'm gonna do my very best to answer them as we go along, and if not, at the very end. And I'm gonna keep this as I am aiming to do with the other, the past and future Facebook Lives. Keep it relatively short because I know we all have a lot of things going on during the day. So here we go. There are different times during your sustainability project that you can make the business case for sustainability, and so you can kind of think about making the business case and calculating the ROI in the way that we're going to talk about it today as kind of the basic way of doing it. There are at least three different ways and three different times during the project that you can make the business case, and I actually talk about that in my Sustainability Accelerator program, which is an online program that is going to be launching shortly to help organizations implement sustainabilty. But enough about that. Let's get started with calculating the ROI. How do you do that, right? The feedback that I've gotten is that it's really tough to figure out the real return on investment for a sustainability project. And why is that? Well, it's really because there are a lot of things that are hard to quantify. And so those soft benefits don't necessarily go into the ROI, and so it's tougher to make a business case a lot of times for sustainability from that vantage point. So today I'm going to walk you through, and we're going to talk about that as well. So the first thing, obviously, that you want to do when you're looking at calculating your sustainability return on investment is figure out your project, identify your project. And when you identify your project, especially when you're starting out, you really want to look at something that is tangible, where you actually can have some cost savings, and obviously there are going to be costs, but where you can have some cost savings that you can point to. So some easy wins, as an example, are energy or recycling or even looking at procurement. But be sure that the project that you're starting out with is relatively simple, is relatively straightforward, because it's going to be easier for you to make that case and to calculate the return on investment at the very up front, right? The second thing that you want to do, and if you're just joining us, we're talking about about making the business case and implementing sustainability via making the business case at your organization. So within making the business case, we really want to focus on the return on investment and having a figure for that ROI that you can actually take to your colleagues and take to executive management, so that they can then in turn say, okay, this makes sense for our organization, or hey, let's maybe hold off for next year, and then we can budget for it and what have you. So again, the first step out of 5 steps is you want to identify your project. The second step is you really want to calculate the current costs, right? So the current costs are costs that are material costs, but they're also time costs. So your time is going to go into that calculation as well, the time that you're going to spend on the sustainability project. But the cost is also what products are you using that that are being used, or how much energy is being expanded, and how much is the company spending on that particular project. And so for recycling, that's an easy one. What are recycling costs? What are your waste costs? And then you're going to want to kind of look at what's the recycling cost and cost savings if you switch some of those costs from waste to recycling. And so that can get a little bit complicated right now, but we're not gonna go into details. Actually, what I would recommend that you do is go into the Eco-Coach blog. I put together a blog for you that provides an example, that walks you through an example as to how to actually calculate the ROI. And I also have a free worksheet for you that can help you do it at your organization. So anyway, you're going to be calculating the cost. And again, the material cost can be anything from the kind of the energy used, the waste cost, and procurement. It could be how much are we using of a particular project. You know, a really simple example is paper, right? How much are we using? Can we switch to recycled? How much would it cost? How much would it cost to print double-sided? That would be an example of a project. The second thing you want to look at is identifying potential savings. So if you are going to go forward with the sustainability project, how do you quantify those savings, right? So I just gave that example of printing double-sided. If you print double-sided, how much paper are you saving per year? And obviously it's going to differ based on your on the size of your business and how paper intensive it is. And I'm really hoping that for most of you businesses out there, you've really switched to digital, so you don't really have that much paper that you're concerned about. So, you know, this could be an easy project to get started on. The ROI might not make that much sense, but you can always try it out and see how it goes. So again, we've identified the project, we have calculated the current costs, and then you've looked at the potential savings. And so again, one of the things that I would encourage you to do, and one of the things that's a little bit tougher to do, is think about the potential savings, not just from the material savings, but also from the time spent. And so time spent on your part, time spent on your colleague's part on doing a specific task. And so, you know, I mentioned that when you're calculating the costs, and let me actually go back to that, when you're calculating the costs around a potential sustainability project, you really, really want to think about your time as well, right? And how much, and also the time that it is taking other individuals to do that project, right? Because if it's taking them, you know, let's say 10 hours per week, I'm exaggerating, you know, ideally nothing like, you know, waste or energy is taking that long. But if it's taking them 10 hours per week to do a project, and you can reduce costs and you can improve the process where it's only taking them 5 hours per week to do that project, and then they're essentially reprioritizing, and they are able to do other things, that is also a cost saving, right? So so you're going to look at material, and you're also going to look at time. And when you're going to look at time, you really want to look at obviously the time on your project, which is a cost, and the time for the people who are taking action. So those two time costs as well. Then what you want to do is you want to calculate your ROI. So your ROI, your return on investment, is really your net benefits minus your costs. And so in order to get your net benefits, you want to look at what the benefits are, what the savings are that you've already calculated, and then you want to subtract the costs. So and then the ROI is really the net project benefits divided by the cost times 100. So I'm kind of was thinking of two things at the same time. So you want to look at that. So you already have your costs, you already have your savings, which are the benefits, and you put those together, and you are going to get a potential ROI. Now, here's a couple things to think about when you're actually doing this calculation. And again, and if you're just joining, I would encourage you, and I'm speaking at a high level right now, but I would encourage you to go to the Eco-Coach website. There is a blog that I've written about ROI, and I have included a specific example. So I walk you through an example, and there's also, you can download a worksheet where you can actually use that worksheet to calculate your ROI at your organization. So I would highly encourage you to do that if that is what you're looking to do. Now, what you also want to do with the ROI, the one thing that I started saying is there is a caveat, which is really that an ROI is still an estimate, right? You are still estimating the costs of material. The material costs are much better, but the time costs are still an estimate. And the savings are going to be an estimate. So when you end up at the end, you're going to have still an estimate, but it is a much better idea of how you could provide benefit to the organization with the sustainability project. Then what you want to do, the last step, the fifth step, is look at potential additional benefits that are not direct benefits. So indirect benefits. So you can look at the environmental benefits of taking this step. So what are the environmental benefits of using double-sided paper, or reducing your paper use? Even better, you're reducing your paper use completely at your organization, which could be a fantastic goal long term. So how much water is saved, right? How many other natural resources are saved? How many trees are saved? And I talk, actually in the blog, I provide a calculator that you can use to look at those environmental benefits. You also want to look at potential other savings that may come up, right? So if you have, for example, something that you should be doing that you're not necessarily doing, and is a requirement, is the law. So in some states, and a lot of states, it's recycling. What costs are you saving or averting by actually recycling and not getting a fine, right? So that's another thing to think about. And you want to add all of those potential savings, and you want to be able to quantify as many as you can. Now, the environmental benefits, you might not be able to do that. But if you can quantify something, like the potential fines averted, then what you want to do is you want to redo your ROI calculation. And when you redo it, you are going to be able to ideally get a better ROI, because what you're doing is you have more costs that you're averting if you're looking at savings. So that is, really quickly at a high level, 5 steps to determining your sustainability ROI. Like I said before, this is determining your ROI is also an estimate. And actually, one tip that I would suggest you think about, if you are listening to this and thinking, wow, this is just, I'm not going to be able to do it because the project that I have in mind is really tough, or it's hard to quantify, or what have you. Well, what you want to think about is maybe look at some case studies, do a little bit of research, and see if there are some case studies out there of some other organizations that have done a similar project, and what their costs have been, what their savings and benefits have been, and kind of what their journey has been. So that way you have a starting point to look at, and you have something to use basically as, not as a template, but as an example in order to guide you. And so again, there are 5 steps that I mentioned. So the first step is you want to identify your project, and you want to make sure that it's a project that is really relatively straightforward and can be quantified. Later on, as you get better at this, you can actually add more complex projects. And at that time, you're going to get more of executive management's ear. And as you're getting momentum, it's going to be easier to have some unquantifiable benefits as part of your ROI, and that's something that they're going to listen to. But in the very beginning, I definitely recommend that you start with something that's really easy to quantify. And then what you want to do is you want to look at the costs, you want to look at the material costs, and you also want to look at the time costs, right? So direct and indirect costs. And then you want to identify savings. And with the savings, I talked about the savings in the 3rd step. I talked about the savings in the 5th step, So in those 2 steps, you want to look at direct and indirect savings. So those direct savings are the savings for when you take those steps, okay? But indirectly, this may also impact some other processes. You also have some environmental benefits and environmental savings that don't go into the original equation. So you want to make sure that that's incorporated. And then the fourth step is calculating your ROI and making sure that you're looking at the net benefits and that those are divided by the cost, right? So your net benefits are going to be your benefits minus your costs. And those are the 5 steps to calculating your sustainability ROI. That is one of the steps, obviously, of making the business case, and it is one of the types of business cases that you can make. And later on, I will also be talking about how to make other components of making a business case for your sustainability project so that you can implement it and you can get management's ear, or you can get your colleagues' ear around implementing your sustainability project. As I mentioned, if you want to see an actual example of this, be sure to go to our Eco-Coach website, check out the blog on the ROI of sustainability, and you can download a worksheet that will enable you to actually walk through those steps at your organization and actually do your ROI, right, your return on investment for your sustainability project. And at the same time, the blog provides you with a concrete example of an ROI calculation, which I did not go into detail right now. I know this is kind of a high level, but this is more of an introductory video for individuals who are looking to implement sustainability at their organization and who are really sure how to calculate their ROI. So again, thank you, and thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next Facebook Live around making the business case for sustainability.